Welcome, everyone, to Calliope's Corner. You're hearing a little bit of music in the background from Leigh Harrison, who is with us here in Studio North, here at WRHU 88.7 FM, Radio Hofstra University. Again, you're at Calliope's Corner, the place where poets and songwriters meet. I want to tell you a little bit about Leigh. She's a Brooklyn-born writer, artist, and musician who has lived in Queens most of her life. She plays acoustic and electric 6 and 12-string guitars, dobro, banjo, guitar. I said that already. She's also African flute player and just all around unbelievably involved in many, many different aspects of writing and art, including she's been published in numerous poetry journals, 2 poetry collections. She's a watercolor pointillistic artist, a collage artist, a model, doll house builder, and she currently works on the staff of Asbestos. We'll talk about that later. Leigh currently, of course, hosts her own open mic for musicians and poets at Munch Cafe in Queens, New York, 2 Sundays a month. Welcome to Calliope's Corner.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. I'm delighted to be here today.
I thank you for that intro.
Yeah, I was just kind of finger picking away there.
I know that the audience was having a lot of fun with it.
I didn't write that, but it's definitely a bouncy little jaunty tune. It's San Francisco Bay Blues, of course, Jesse Fuller's tune. That is so bouncy. I love that.
It is. It certainly is. It's a happy tune. Listen, you've done so much here in the New York City metro area. Let's just start with asking you about what your first, what was your first recollection that you had of your writing for fun, your songwriting background?
Okay, sure. I started writing when I was 4 years old. I think my mom had been reading me poems by Robert Louis Stevenson and other children's poems by him and other children's authors. And I was about 4, and I began to compose melodies for his poems as a child. I started creating melodies. And I wrote my first poem when I was 8 years old. It was published in a local paper in Queens. Actually, still have a copy somewhere.
Wow.
And I was always encouraged to write poetry and to create, and I always have. It's the one constant of my life is creating and writing and prose and poetry and songs.
I find that a lot of people who are writers and songwriters and artists in general really have started out at a young age and don't really recognize it until they're older that they really were like you were starting out at 12.
That's right. Well, maybe it's the Mozart thing, Mozart composing at 4. Yeah, I don't think I noticed in all the early years I was doing it, because as a child I was exploring everything. I was, learning to bike ride, learning to paint, learning to make my own little greeting cards, and it never occurred to me that those things would be permanent parts of my life, that they would be constants all my life. It wasn't until I was much older, 20s, 30s, I started to realize, hey, I've been doing this my whole life. And some things have been constant, and one of them is the songwriting, composing, poetry, painting. They're all really constants.
You have currently, I don't know, so many chapbooks and a book, right?
Well,
you have a book and
one
a
chapbook and one book, but I'm actually in the middle of writing
writing
some new ones.
Another one. So you've got Tour de Farce.
That's my real book, as they call it in the poetry world.
And you've got Our Harps Upon the Windows.
Oh, wait, we've got them reversed. Actually,
reversed.
Tour de Farce is my chapbook, which came from the word cheap book. There are those thin, slim volumes that poets put out, usually saddle stapled, maybe 12 pages, 20 pages. That's my chapbook, and it's Tour de Farce is my collection of humor and parody poems. I write a lot of parodies of other poets.
And the other collection
is
about
a real
spiritual, faith-oriented poems?
Yeah, they're poems about spiritual faith and doubt. The title, Our Harps Upon the Willows, was taken from one of the Psalms in the Old Testament where the Israelites were in Babylonian captivity, and the captors said, tell us about your life. Tell us where you came from and what you did. And it says in the Psalm, by the rivers of Babylon we lay down, we remembered Zion, we hung our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. And because I'm both a poet and a musician, I was like hanging up my guitar, hanging up my harp to tell my poems, my stories. And so the book is, Our Harps Upon the Willows is like just poetry, not songs or lyrics.
Can you please read that?
Well, I can read one of them. Actually, I do have a poem called Lilith, which is a sonnet that I wrote. And, of course, Lilith was the first wife of Adam before he met Eve. She's the one that was dismissed because she wouldn't do what Adam said. And, of course, she's a model for all wild women who may not do what people tell them to do, but do what other people tell them. Lilith. Audacious, she slinks to him, struts and pouts, tenders forthright kisses with naughty cheek. Her wild eyes flare with passion's sleepless bouts, her scarlet lips betray each time they speak. And Eden hums with bees, the moon's oblique, ardor moistens flesh, amber grapes grow fat upon the vine, and purple berries leak nectar on thirsty rock. She's like some cat that purrs in sweet delight, or serpent that will proffer ruby fruit to his next wife. This woman walks by night, knows who begat her from the dust and clay, who gave her life, who'll banish her into her silent scream and crown her demon darkness that men dream.
This is all women's lament. This
Nobody likes to be told what to do. Certainly not me.
And that's an interesting piece of religious history that you picked up.
Well, I actually didn't know it until I met a group of women who were all doing poems about biblical poems. And one of them said, "Oh, every Jewish woman has a Lilith poem." And I thought, well, I don't.
Not yet.
So maybe I should get busy and write something about Lilith. And when I read about her and how she had kind of refused to obey Adam, I thought, hey, that's me. I'm not going to listen to someone tell me what to do all the time. So occasionally, but. So I wrote a
with
Lilith
that,
poem.
I'm going to ask you to do something.
Uh-oh.
If you could so please. Will you read another poem from the chapbook, Tour de Force?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Okay. Well, this is the chapbook Tour de Force is, from its title, obviously, humor. It's based on the phrase tour de force, but it's all poems of parody. They're whimsical poems. Some are parodies of other poets. This one was not a parody of someone, but based on the fact that I had seen something in the newspaper about how women's clothes, their dresses were getting shorter, and their
shirts
were
getting short.
Yeah, the tops were getting lower.
Longer.
So this is called Indeed. Look at that young girl, the dowager sniffed, with a glare and an audible snort. Her neckline is plunging beyond where it should, and that dress is exceedingly short. The young man looked over admiringly and said, "She has a nice waist, although she's revealing a good deal more flesh than those clothes will reveal of good taste." But the young man was smiling and thinking, observing her from head to feet, wondering how long before fashion decreed that the hem and the neckline would meet.
I enjoy, too, the sound effect that you
the audible
included.
snort.
Yeah,
yes,
that was great.
Right there out of early Lily Tomlin.
You have been also known to be the creator of two new poetic forms, the Harrisonian sonnet and the patina. Am I saying that correctly?
Pentina.
Which is a variation of the sestina.
Yes, exactly.
Tell us how that happened. Explain to us what they are.
Okay, well, the Harrisonian sonnet happened because I was noticing that there were already several kinds of sonnets. There was the Shakespearean, there was the Spenserian, the Petrarchian, each one slightly different in their AABB or ABBA or ABAB, the forms of the first two the octave and then the sestet at the end. They all had slight variations. And I thought, well, why couldn't you do one that was AA, BB, CC, DD, EE, FF, GG? And so I did, and I called it the Harrisonian. And for a while when I was teaching poetry, I taught my students that one. It's possible a lot of people have created that too, but since I called it the Harrisonian, I still do. And then another poem, which definitely I'm the originator of, I know for a fact, I've written articles about it, and it doesn't appear anywhere in history or anywhere. The Sestina, on which my pentina is based. The Sestina, obviously, people who know poetry know that it's a poem with 39 lines, 6 verses of 6 lines each, and a final 3-line tercet. And there are 6 rhymed, or rather not rhymes, but 6 words that repeat throughout in a certain formal pattern. And the pattern is not numerical or even alphabetic, but it's kind of a certain pattern.
Repetitive.
Yes, it's a spatial pattern in which you do lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be first the last line, then the first line, then 5, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 3, and the spatial pattern repeats throughout the 6 verses. And a friend of mine, a wonderful poet, a woman, who created a 7-line form which she called the Septima, and with a 4-line. A final envoy. And I thought, well, if you can have one with 7, why couldn't you have one with 5? And so I created the Pentina many years ago. I've written articles about it. And I think there might even be one on Wikipedia that I wrote about it. I'm not sure if it's still there. But it is basically a poem in which there are 5 repeated words.
Now, since this onset of these 2 new forms, have you created any new forms?
Not
anything
recently.
New?
No, I haven't been creating new forms. I've just been writing new poetry.